part 2 of our whitewater basics for SUPing. What I want to do is talk to you a little bit about the paddle that we use. As you can see, this is a single bladed paddle with a blade that's canted back. And it's canted back like this so that when you're paddling forwards, what happens is it comes through the water, and when you get to the end of the stroke, there's minimal pickup of water when you're bringing it out of the water, so you don't get tired. If it was the other way, as you see when it gets to the back, you're picking up a lot of water and it gets really tiring and fatiguing when you're paddling. So when we're paddling, we use it blade back like this. For choosing your paddle length, it's very simple. Basically, the average person likes to have their paddle between 8 to 10 inches over their head. 10 inches gives you a little bit more sort of grab and power to use, but it's a little bit more chance of getting entangled. 8 inches, shorter, quicker movement, less chance of it tangling up on the board, but also less reach and less power. The way I find the length of my paddle, that's 10 inches overhead, is actually dependent on the size of your board. Essentially, let's say that we're going to go with 10 inches. So I put my paddle, and I would want to take the height of my head and add basically the thickness of my board, which would be, in some cases, let's say 5 inches, plus 5 inches overhead. That is the best way to find what it is that you want. So you go with the paddle length, 5 inches overhead, plus the thickness of your board where you stand. So in this case, the board is about 6.5 inches where I stand. So I go paddle length to my height, 5 inches overhead, plus 6.5 over that, and that gives me my paddle length, which for me tends to work very well. There are some people who say you just go for an 8-inch overhead or a 10-inch overhead. I prefer really to use the board thickness as an indication, because if your board is thick like this one, and I have the same length paddle as I would, for example, on my surfing SUP, which is only 4.5 inches, and here's 6.5 inches, then it's either too long on my surfing SUP, or it's going to be too short on this one, and I'm always hunched over when I'm paddling. So that's pretty important to find the right paddle length based on the thickness of your board. Now for the stroke, personally I prefer to paddle all on one side. Now there's two lines of thought with this. A lot of people will paddle on one side. When they need to, they switch to the other side and they paddle the other side. There's nothing wrong with that. My personal preference is it's all on one side. In order to do that, you need to have an efficient either J stroke or C stroke. The easiest of these is the J stroke. For the J stroke, you basically put the paddle in the water, you pull it back to where you are here, you turn the paddle so the power face is facing into the board, and then you push away with the back of the stroke, with the back of the blade like this. So this will tend to turn the board left a little bit as I'm paddling on the right. I turn it and I pull the nose back to the right. This will push the board to the left, this will turn it back to the right. And you get a good rhythm going and you can go forever. This is what it looks like. And you can just maintain this endlessly, you can go a long way. Now, the reason why you need such an efficient corrective stroke on a whitewater SUP is, generally speaking, we either have no fins on the back of the board or very, very small ones. We have rocks in the river, we're going to hit those rocks. The boards are wider, they have less draft, they're shorter, so you have less length for tracking. And at the tiny fin, they tend to be very turny. Obviously, you want that in whitewater, but in order to go straight, in order to be able to make it where you want to go, you need to be able to have this corrective stroke. And so this J stroke, I'm showing you here, is very effective. The other stroke I want to show you now is the C stroke. Now the C stroke is a little bit more complicated. It's more efficient in the sense that you maintain more of your forward speed, but it's less corrective. You start off by placing the blade with the power face pointing at about 45 degrees to the bow. You pull it towards the bow, which turns the bow right. You straighten out, you push back, which then starts to turn the board left. You push the power face away from you, and you push out, which then brings the tail back into line and brings the bow back to the right. So the boat basically goes bow right, bow left, bow right. Much smaller corrections, but much more efficient. In the C stroke, every now and then, you might have to do either a J, like what I'll do is I'll start off with a J stroke, and then I'll go into a C stroke. It's a much smaller, more efficient stroke, but on the other hand, you get a lot more speed going, a lot less speed loss, but it's a lot more difficult stroke to master. That is essentially what the C stroke looks like. Have a look at it again. Now the advantage of the C stroke is, especially when you're paddling in what I call the Kung Fu position, which is over here, the C stroke is very efficient on your onside. In this position, I can go all day long. I have lots of control. When I need to, I can step back. I can make it a more aggressive C stroke. And same thing there. Obviously, when I'm not trying to move something and I'm just cruising along, I'll move my back foot up. It's a more comfortable position, and I can keep seeing away and never have to worry about it. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about cross bows. Coming back to the thought process that there's different ways of paddling an SUP. Paddling on one side and then crossing over to paddling on the other side. My personal preference is to keep my paddle all in one hand all the time. I do this because there's never a chance of me being taken off guard right as I'm changing hands. It takes a couple of seconds to do this movement. Even if you're very efficient at it, it's still a couple of seconds to get that registration to get back into position. So what I prefer to do is to do cross bow strokes that the C1s and the canoes use on a board that's this wide and stable. And if you look at this thing, I can basically stand on it on one foot like that without tipping over, which means I have so much stability and forgiveness that when I'm paddling, what I would rather do if I need to paddle on the other side is cross over. Now the basic forward stroke on a cross bow is very simple. You pull this towards the bow, you pull it forward, you slide it out, and then you pull the tail back. So this pulls the bow left, this pushes the bow right, and this pulls the bow left again. You end up with this sort of S stroke. And you can do that stroke without even taking the paddle out of the water. So I go from here, and I can just do, and then I slide it up, and I slide it up, and then from this position, I can actually move along at a good clip. You can, of course, take it out of the water, but I prefer just to feather it up, and then I'm good to go. So I suddenly realized that I need to move 5 feet river right. Instead of switching, I just do this, and I'm moving, cross, and then I'm back on the side, and I'm done. Very simple to do. Again, you can also turn the board and cross bow like this, pull it around. Nice and easy, just like that. Now the cross bow is very efficient, especially if you're doing major turnings. So I'm coming in, I go off a drop, let's say, I stand back, I go off a drop, I land, and now I really need to turn quickly. I keep my paddle in the water, I step back, pull the boat around, board swings, and then I can step forward again, and I'm good to go. Very efficient stroke. Here again, I want to go right, just sweep across on this side, step back, pull it around, and I'm moving forward. It's a great advantage when you have a board that's really stable, really easy, to be able to do everything with your paddle on one side, same way the canoeists, same way the C1ers do it. It's much more efficient, I believe, than switching out. The only time I'll really switch out is, for example, if I'm in a river left eddy, I'm looking upstream, I have a really hard ferry, a hard move to bust, to get out into the current, and I don't want to get my bow turned downstream, then I'll switch sides. Generally, I'll get a little bit of speed, moving towards the eddy line, and right as I get to the eddy line, from here, I'll switch, and then power across, make my move out into the current, and once I'm in the current, I generally switch back before I need to, so that if anything happens, or now if I need to hit downstream, I can go in, start hitting downstream, and I'm good to go. Obviously, if you're in flat water, or this is moving current, my Kung Fu stance won't be that pronounced. As soon as I feel like I need to, I go into a much more aggressive stance here, and if I really have to, and I have to turn my board really fast, I'll step back, and then I can whip this thing around really quickly, and I'm back up in position. Well, I think that's about it for today. We'll see you next time. Happy paddling.